The Office premiered in 2005 to mixed reviews from an underwhelming number of viewers. Shrinking in the shadow of its acclaimed British counterpart, the show narrowly avoided cancellation after just 6 episodes. About 15 years later, it would go on to become arguably the most popular sitcom of all time. The legacy left behind by The Office is truly inescapable. You'll find GIFs and references from the show in just about every corner of the internet. And that's just for the general public. For the actors that were in this show, forget about it. These people are going to get called by their characters' names for the rest of their lives. Imagine going on a podcast to talk about a TV show you were on 20 years ago, and all of the top comments are like, man, it's so weird to hear Kevin talking normal. Why is he doing that? Make him stop.
I want to kill Kevin Malone.
I guess the thing that happens when you cast as wide of a net as The Office has managed to is that you're gonna pick up a lot of different kinds of people. And I think nowhere has that been more apparent than in the reactions to the new Office sequel series, The Paper. I want you to think of any opinion that someone could have about anything. And I promise you, there is someone out there who has that opinion about this show. There are people who think it's too much like the original. There are people who think it's not similar enough. I've seen people call it a lazy cash grab, and other people say it's the best show they've seen in years. Some people are already asking for fan fiction, and other people are complaining about DEI. Surprise, surprise, another show with women in it. Yeah, I'm out. Wake me up when they make something that's just a bunch of dudes. Young, hot dudes with their shirts off. This person is mad that their husband doesn't kiss them like the guy on the show. This person asked and then answered their own question, and all they had to do was look at the video they were responding to. And this person called Peacock poopcock. And that's just not nice at all. But the most prevalent opinion I've seen about the show, almost everywhere it gets mentioned, is that it will never be as good as the original and that Hollywood has no new ideas. Now, while I agree that this show probably won't be as good as The Office was, and I am also fairly tired of sequels and spin-offs in lieu of fresh new ideas, the show you're talking about literally was a reboot. The pilot episode of The American Office was a near word-for-word recreation of a show that already existed. Yeah, reboots can be kind of annoying, but this is not the time to make that argument. Also, I think we're revising history a little bit here. Season 1 of The Office was not that good. Season 1 of Parks and Rec was even worse. It took a while for those shows to figure out how to best utilize all the characters and even just find the overall tone. In the case of Parks and Rec, that show really didn't hit its stride until season 3 when they hired Adam Scott and Rob Lowe to replace this guy whose name I could not tell you if my life depended on it. I guess what bothers me about this is that a lot of the people who complain that nothing new gets made anymore also won't give new things a chance because they're not immediately better than the thing they already like. I think an important distinction to make about The Paper is that it's not trying to be The Office 2. Yes, it's made by one of the original creators, it's written and directed in the same style, it takes place just a few towns over from Scranton, and there is one single character from that show that is also in this one. But it's not a continuation of the same story or any of its characters. It's very much trying to be its own thing, and I think does so pretty successfully when they're not slamming you over the head with references to the old show.
It's giving me PTSD from an old boss.
I know who he's talking about.
Maybe too easy for you, Stanley.
I know who he's talking about.
Nobody wants this.
Every time one of these would happen, I would get unreasonably upset. Obviously, I get why they do these, and I do seem to be in the minority with this opinion, but it just feels so pandery. I also think when you lean too much into these references, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because the more these shows are connected, the more it invites comparison. And if people are constantly comparing the two shows, there's gonna be a clear winner. And that's kind of the double-edged sword of a show like The Paper. A lot of people are only going to watch it because it is tangentially connected to The Office, but then they're also going to spend the majority of its runtime comparing the two. And honestly, it's kind of impossible not to. Throughout the pilot, every time a character would come on screen, I would be like, okay, so that's the new Jim, that's the new Pam, and then that's sort of like Angela, and she's like Italian Michael, and that's the new Stanley?
Did anybody hear that?
Oh, Sorry, my prejudice is showing. That's Black Creed. Mostly because I was so curious to see what this show was gonna be. I watched all 10 episodes of it, and I have pretty mixed feelings. Unfortunately, I'm blanking on what I was gonna say. Just watch this ad real quick while I try to remember.
Football season just started, and it's already ruining my life. But basketball season is right around the corner, so maybe my other favorite team won't let me down? And that's why I'm excited to shout out the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek. Every time I want to pull my hair out at an Orlando Magic game, SeatGeek is the first app I check. Why? Because it's the easiest way to find the best deal on tickets. Not only does every seat have its own value rating, but I love that it also shows you what your view is going to be, so you don't accidentally buy a seat that's like behind a statue or facing the wrong way. I've gone to a ton of games over the years using SeatGeek, but it's not just for sports. The app has more than 70,000 events, including concerts, comedy shows, music festivals, and more. What do I mean by more? You're gonna have to download the app to find out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. So if you and 14 of your closest friends wanna go see Benson Boone do 100 backflips, click the link in the description and use my promo code DREW10 for 10% off your SeatGeek tickets. That's 10% off your tickets with promo code DREW10. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you guys at the game. Touchdown!
Something about Oh, yeah. So there were parts of the paper that I legitimately laughed out loud at, followed by lines that would make me want to set my TV on fire. The pilot specifically is kind of a mess. Structurally, it's just all over the place. So we open on the old office building and we hear from Bob Vance. And we like that because we remember him from the other show. And then we cut over to a different part of the building and we hear this person talk about Dunder Mifflin, which we remember from the other show. And then we cut to the new office, which for a minute I thought was in London because this guy's British, but it's actually in Toledo. And we learn that this place sells toilet paper and regular paper and newspapers. And then we hard cut to this old documentary about how the newspaper used to be good, and then we cut back to see that now it is bad. And then the theme song plays, and then we're introduced to a second boss, and then she introduces us to everyone else, including Oscar, who we remember from the other show. And then we meet the main character who is coming in to be the third boss, and this is just like the first 9 minutes. It's so disjointed that it almost made me think that the cold open, a scene that has zero actual connection to anything else in the show, it was a Peacock mandated insert demanded by some executive who walked into the writer's room with a Google Gemini summary of the script and said, "But how will people know that this is The Office if we don't show The Office?" Now, if you guys need me for anything else, I will be on a spaceship with Katy Perry. I listened to an episode of the Office Ladies podcast about this pilot, and I felt like it was kind of telling that the very first nice thing they said about the show was just how long it was.
This episode is 33 minutes and 18 seconds.
And how much fun is that?
It kind of felt like when someone shows you a movie that you know they love, but you weren't really into it, so you have to just think of anything positive at all to say about it. Yeah, dude, no, the aspect ratio is crazy.
It's called Eat House.
Mm-hmm.
Get it? Eat House.
Eat House?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, hilarity ensues.
I also think it's funny just because the length is something I did not like about the pilot. I felt like it was way too long. This is a criticism I've had for years with other streaming shows where they leave too much in because there's no mandated length, but then the pacing feels off because of it. Like, one thing that's great about a lot of older network comedies is how they just fly through the episode. It's airtight because it had to be. And I think that if they had just cut out a couple of minutes of the weakest jokes in this pilot, it would have been received a lot better than it was. But instead, a lot of people just gave up on the show altogether. I probably would have too if I didn't force myself to be patient with it. Most shows aren't incredible right out of the gate, and pilots are difficult because there's a lot of things you have to get right. You have to establish the plot, introduce every one of its characters, tell a story that's somewhat wrapped up in one episode, but that provides enough intrigue moving forward so people want to keep watching, all while trying to be funny and interesting with dialogue that needs to exposit but cannot seem expository. It's rare for a series to nail all of that on its first attempt. So I didn't want to hold it against the show that the pilot is a little underwhelming, because at the very least, I do think they set up a really interesting premise, and that's probably the best thing the paper has going for it. A show about how a once great newspaper has been relegated to just being a clickbait factory whose only purpose is to generate whatever whatever ad revenue it can for its parent company feels super relevant. By far the funniest parts of the pilot are the scenes that satirize the state of modern journalism. I love when Esmeralda proudly shows off her favorite article she's written, and it's just like the kind of thing you'd see at the bottom of a news page with some sensationalized title and a crappy AI thumbnail.
And then you keep learning about colors of cars. There are so many colors.
To me, this is what gives the paper a much stronger hook than it would if it was just another workplace comedy about a job that sucks. Because even though that premise worked great the first time they did it, if that's all this show was, it would feel completely pointless. This premise also gives you something to root for as you're watching it. There's a goal that everybody's working towards. The main guy, Ned, comes in with this Leslie Knope style passion and determination to turn this company around. And if you can buy into it, his enthusiasm starts to feel infectious. But I think it definitely takes a few episodes to get to that point. And part of the reason is because early on, the vibe of the show is kind of atrocious. It feels like everybody's an antagonist. The other bosses are trying to sabotage Ned. None of the employees give a shit. Oscar's pissed off whenever he's on camera. The industry itself is antagonistic. Like, it's already such an uphill battle for them to try to turn around this struggling newspaper that to add in all these other elements on top of that make it incredibly frustrating to watch. It's almost the inverse problem the first season of The Office had. In that show, you had to watch a bunch of people deal with one shitty guy. But in this show, you have to watch one guy deal with a bunch of shitty people. And it makes you not really like any of the characters in a show that is only going to work if you like the characters. But for the first couple episodes, it feels like everyone is just a slightly different flavor of stupid. This guy is stupid, but has kids. This guy is stupid, but old. This woman is stupid and loud. There would be funny moments, but it just felt like something was missing. Like there were some interesting ingredients in the pot, but it wasn't melding together into a good meal. In episode 2, I really liked the dynamic they were setting up with Adam and Adalola as a comedic duo when they go out and try and fail to do some investigative journalism. It had a real Parks and Rec vibe, you know? There were a couple lines I chuckled at.
I'm not buying any of this shit. You can answer questions here, you can answer them down at the station.
And it made sense that because they're so gullible, they would believe these teenagers who lie to them about the new craze that everyone is doing, and then they naively go write a story about it. It felt like everything was setting up for a really solid sitcom B-plot. But the specific lie they told them was that all the kids are acting like dogs. So then they start barking. And then later on, the episode ends with the two of them getting arrested for barking. And it just felt like there had to have been some other funny specific they could have put in. Like that was maybe the placeholder, and then they just never replaced it with a better idea. In episode 4, they established that one of their biggest competitors is a blog run by a local high school. And it's fun because even though there's this rivalry there, at the end of the day, it's just a random kid. As things go back and forth, you feel like it's all gonna lead up to something big and funny, and then all of a sudden the episode just kind of ends. They trick him into putting out a fake story to damage his credibility. They write their own article about it, and then Ned is like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. And then it's over. So like the climax of the episode is just a quiet reaction to something that happened off screen. The ending of every episode doesn't need to be some outlandish over the top moment, but I feel like it should at least crescendo. You know, that's what you tend to expect out of a sitcom. That they're gonna set up 2 or 3 different storylines that'll each slowly build up until they all converge in a satisfying way. And almost every one of these early episodes just kind of fizzles out at the end. Like we're kind of getting close, but we're never all the way there. And that was my biggest opinion about the show through the first 4 episodes. But then for whatever reason, suddenly in episode 5, everything kind of started to click for me. Maybe it was just more consistently good writing. Maybe it was that I had now had enough time to understand the characters. Maybe it was the Sawyer from Lost cameo. It was probably that. But if I had to narrow it down to just one thing, I think it would be that this is when the Esmeralda character finally makes sense. By far, the most polarizing thing about this show is Esmeralda. People hate her. A lot of viewers have said she's the reason they stopped watching the show altogether. They say she's annoying and too much and that she's trying too hard. And if anyone from Peacock is reading all of these comments, I am begging you to ignore them. They are wrong. She is hilarious. This show would be so fucking boring without her. She's kind of the only character with energy, and it's such a fun energy. Her performance feels completely unique. I feel like I've never seen this exact character on TV before, and I love it. Is she annoying sometimes? Absolutely. But she's supposed to be. That's kind of her role on the show, is to cause chaos that everybody else has to deal with. But it's not because she's just a terrible person, it's usually out of self-preservation. She feels threatened when Ned comes in and is potentially better at doing her job than she is, so she tries to make his life more difficult. And because her motives are always so transparent, I feel like you can empathize with her. Sometimes she does way too much because she's so desperate for approval. It's fun to watch someone who wears their emotions on their sleeve and is incapable of hiding how they feel. And I don't know if you noticed, but almost everything I just said is also how you could describe Michael Scott. I'm not saying that this performance is as good as Steve Carell was in the prime of his career, but I like that it's different enough to stand on its own. Michael Scott was lightning in a bottle, and the thing they say about lightning is you can't catch it twice. So I'm glad they didn't try to. That they didn't try to replace that character with someone doing a lot of the same things with the same look and the same mannerisms. Like Tim Key. Also very funny in this. From the moment he steps on screen, it just kind of feels like he's doing a Ricky Gervais impression. He's doing a great job, but it certainly doesn't feel new. Whereas Sabrina Impacciatore feels very refreshing. And I'm just hoping the showrunners are aware of what they have in her and aren't going to lobotomize the show in an effort to appease a handful of angry reviews. It's more than a handful, but still. Overall, episode 5 is when this show really started to gel for me, and it only continued through the rest of the season. Each character started to become more defined and not just like interchangeable dumbasses.
I just can't have any more kids. 4 is just about manageable because you get 1 per hand per adult, but 5, I've been thinking like, how do you even do that? To use a foot? And then people think you're kicking them?
Once Ken and Esmeralda realize that their goals are aligned and they become more of a team, their dynamic gets so much funnier. Also, as a longtime fan of Eric Rahill, it's just really cool to see him get more opportunities, both as an actor and a writer. His character, Travis, is someone I'm intrigued by, but I still think has a lot of untapped potential. My favorite arc in the whole show starts in episode 7 when they introduce their new product, a flushable glove that you can use to wipe your ass, and ends in episode 8 when Esmeralda takes her son to audition for the commercial.
Do my rewrite. You know, I'm a journalist. I like writing, so.
I was born filthy in sin, so it'd be
Not that one.
It's baseball season, and the only stains my single mom should be getting out of my pants are grass stains.
This specific tone and style of comedy is something I missed from the Greg Daniels cinematic universe, and I'm happy to have it back. The second half of the season isn't just funnier than the first half. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like a different show. It's significantly less pessimistic, so it's not as draining to watch. For me, it started to have that comfy sitcom feeling where it's like, is this the greatest show in the world? No. But if there were 80 more episodes of this, I would happily watch all of them over the course of a month. Unfortunately, though, right as things are all coming together for the paper, it ends with a finale that just felt so forced and rushed. Just a few hours of screen time ago, Ned came into an office with no journalists and no skills. The first paper they put out had the headline, "No news is good news," because everybody messed up so bad they couldn't even publish something in time. And then in the season finale, just 8 episodes later, the Toledo Truth Teller wins a bunch of awards. And also Ned and Mayor Professor love for each other and everything works out for everybody at the end. And I think this is where the show needs to decide what it wants to be. Do they want it to be about a bunch of incompetent morons failing to do their jobs in an entertaining way? Or do they want it to be a kind of feel-good story about the scrappy underdogs making a comeback? Because you can't really do both. You can't have 7 episodes dedicated to how stupid everybody is, and then 3 episodes later, they're winning journalism awards. It's not a satisfying ending if it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm not saying you should have to drag everything out just for the sake of making it longer, but a feel-good story is really only gonna feel as good as the amount of time it took to get there. In Parks and Rec, Leslie wins the election for city council at the end of season 4, about 70 episodes into the show. In The Office, Jim and Pam had all this tension and chemistry through the first 2 seasons, seasons, but they didn't kiss for the first time until 30 episodes in. So when those things finally happened, it felt like a huge deal because we'd spent so much time building up to it. I understand from the showrunner's point of view, they were only given 10 episodes to work with, so they probably just wanted to give it a nice happy ending just in case Peacock didn't give them a season 2. But I really hope going forward they can get that number closer to 20 or 25 episodes to give everything a chance to breathe. They've already renewed it for a season 2, and they're planning to air the current episodes on NBC, so maybe it'll get more of the network sitcom treatment going forward, which would be good because I think that's how this show would best thrive. Like I said, the paper made me realize how much I missed being able to casually watch a new sitcom. The kinds of shows that you can watch a few episodes every night over the course of like 3 months and have it serve as this cozy distraction from whatever might be stressing you out in life. It's like the comfortability of a familiar set and a group of people you just get to spend a bunch of time with. Clearly, people still yearn for this type of show, and there just aren't nearly as many of them made anymore. That energy is more often put into the high-quality prestige dramedies, you know, shows that are funny sometimes, but also stressful, and we can't put a bunch of episodes out because we're trying to win Emmys. There are a few network sitcoms that have received a decent-sized audience. I just started watching Abbott Elementary, and I like that so far. I've heard St. Denis Medical is pretty funny, but every time I look at the title, my red dead ass wants to call it Saint Denis. And judging by the number of commercials I've seen for Ghosts every time I've tried to watch football the past 6 years, it seems like that one's doing pretty well too. But the most watched shows continue to be comedies that wrapped up over a decade ago. It's kind of funny that because of the way TV has evolved, the best case scenario for these sitcoms is that they garner just enough of an audience to keep making it. And then once all 7 seasons are done and it can be thrown onto Netflix 8 years later, that's when it becomes the most popular it's ever been by a mile. But I also wonder if it's only gonna get harder for sitcoms to even get to that point because of how different our approach to entertainment has become. Historically speaking, every sitcom needs some amount of time for the pieces to all come together. But the amount of time that people, myself included, are generally willing to give something is shorter than it's ever been. If you go on TikTok or Instagram somewhat regularly, you've probably gotten used to the feeling of, if this video does not interest me within 1 second, I'm getting the hell out of here. Make me laugh right now or stop wasting my time. My precious, precious time that I spend 9 hours a day of melting my brain with the flashlight I keep in my pocket. The Office was an incredible success story, but I have to wonder, if that first season came out today, would people be willing to give the same amount of time for the show to figure itself out? Or because of our increased impatience, would we be much quicker to just write it off? I don't know, because this is a hypothetical scenario I made up in my head. Anyway, I'm optimistic about the paper. I think they've planted a lot of interesting seeds, and I'm curious to see what it can grow into. And at the same time, I understand the frustration from people who don't even want to give it a chance, because it does seem like yet another reboot coming along to dangle something familiar in front of us so we stand and cheer. But as long as they continue to make the show its own thing and lean less into all the nostalgia bait, I think there's a lot of potential here. In the same way that Parks and Recreation was successful without ever needing to have its universe tie into The Office's, I think this show can succeed on its own the more it moves away from the original. But no matter what they do, they're gonna disappoint someone. If they keep Esmeralda around, some people are gonna stop watching. If they get rid of her, I'll stop watching. And for some people, it seems like they're only gonna keep watching just in case more Office characters pop in. What if Dwight had a son? And what if Jim had a son? And then they could be friends. And then we could just do the same exact show with the same exact characters, but played by different actors. What is this, HBO's Harry Potter series? Move on! Nothing you ever watch is going to immediately be on par with the show you've watched 100 hours of. You gotta open your heart up first, brother. All I ask is that you try not to develop a strong opinion about something before you even give it a chance. Try to go into everything with a clean slate, and if you like it, awesome. If you don't, that's fine too, but at least you've figured that out on your own. Just don't let some stranger on the internet tell you how you should feel about something. Unless it's me, of course. You can trust me. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I know that a random-ass Peacock show is not exactly the most pressing thing going on in the world right now, but lately my brain has felt like mush, so for the time being, this is the best I can do. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see my next video, where I will be ranking every number in order of how big they are. Bye.